Hey everyone, Sophia here. Welcome to Revenge Shift, where the best stories come to life. Hit subscribe for your daily dose. I was nobody when I met Richard Ashford. At least, that's what everyone reminded me, sometimes with sympathy, sometimes with barely concealed judgment, and eventually Richard himself with increasing frequency. I'd been a nobody in the most literal sense. A foster kid who'd aged out of the system at 18 with nothing but a high school diploma. A duffel bag of belongings and a work ethic forged from years of instability. No family money, no connections. No safety net. I put myself through community college working 3 jobs. I transferred to a state university on a needs-based scholarship. I graduated with a degree in social work and $23,000 in student loans, which felt like a mountain of debt but also like an achievement. I'd made something from nothing. I got a job at a nonprofit that helped at-risk youth kids like I'd been. The pay was barely above poverty level, but the work mattered. I was good at it. I understood these kids because I'd been these kids. That's where I met Richard. He was there for a photo opportunity. Ashford Capital Management sponsored our annual fundraising gala. Richard, as the founder's son and heir apparent, attended to represent the firm. He was 34, movie star handsome in that old money way, and clearly bored by the speeches about helping disadvantaged youth. I was assigned to give him a tour of our facilities, show him where his family's tax-deductible donation was going. This is our tutoring center, I explained, walking him through the bright, donated space where volunteers helped kids with homework every afternoon. We've increased reading proficiency by an average of 2 grade levels per year. Impressive, Richard said, but he was checking his phone. This is our job training program. We partner with local businesses to provide real-world experience and, Ms. Hayes. He looked up from his phone. Claire, right? Yes, this is all very inspiring. But I have a dinner meeting in 40 minutes. Can we speed this up? I should have been offended. Instead, I laughed. Of course. The abbreviated version, your family's money is genuinely helping kids who started with nothing build actual futures. You can feel good about the tax deduction. Something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe, or amusement. You're direct. You're busy. No point wasting your time with the inspirational poverty narrative. I appreciate that. He put his phone away. Tell me something. Why do you do this? The pay must be terrible. It is, I agreed. But I aged out of foster care at 18. I know what these kids are facing. If I can help even a few of them beat the odds, that's worth more than a bigger paycheck. You were in foster care? 7 placements between ages 9 and 18. Not all of them were great. But I survived, went to college, got out. Now I help others do the same. Richard studied me with more attention than he'd given anything else that evening. That's remarkable. Most people who start with nothing stay there. Only because the system is designed that way, I said. With the right support, most people are capable of extraordinary things. Have dinner with me, he said abruptly. I blinked. What? Tonight? My meeting just became significantly less interesting than this conversation. Have dinner with me instead. I should have said no. Richard Ashford was so far outside my world that we might as well have been different species. But there was something in his directness, his unexpected interest, that made me curious. Okay, I said. Dinner. That was 6 years ago. Richard pursued me with the same focused intensity he brought to everything. Expensive dinners, weekend trips, thoughtful gifts that showed he actually listened when I talked. Within 3 months, I was half in love with him. Within 6 months, completely. You're different from the women I usually date, he told me once, early on. You're real, you're grounded. You don't want anything from me except me. It was true. I'd never been impressed by his money because I'd never had money to be impressed by. I just liked him, his sharp intelligence, his dry humor. The way he seemed genuinely interested in my work, even though it existed in a completely different universe from his. We got married 18 months after that first dinner. Small ceremony, just his parents and a few close friends on his side, my former foster care caseworker on mine. Richard's mother, Victoria Ashford, made it clear through frozen smiles that her son was marrying beneath his station, but Richard didn't seem to care. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, he told me on our wedding night. You make me better than I am. The first year was good. Richard was building his reputation at Ashford Capital, working 80-hour weeks to prove he deserved his position based on merit, not just his last name. I continued my work at the nonprofit, though Richard gently suggested I didn't need to work anymore. We have more than enough, he said. You could volunteer, pursue other interests, enjoy life. My work is my life, I told him. These kids need consistency. I can't just abandon them. Of course not, he said, though something in his tone suggested he didn't really understand. The second year, cracks started showing. Richard made senior vice president at Ashford Capital. His father officially named him heir apparent to the firm. Richard's income jumped from substantial to obscene bonuses alone that exceeded what I made in 5 years. You should quit the nonprofit, he said over dinner one evening. It doesn't make sense anymore. The commute alone eats up 2 hours of your day. You could do so much more with your time. Like what? Charity boards, fundraising committees. The kind of networking that actually moves the needle for these organizations. Your current job is direct service. That's admirable, but it's not scalable. You could have real impact in a leadership role. He wasn't wrong, exactly. But something about the way he said it made my stomach tight. I like direct service, I said. I like working with the kids themselves. Claire, you're 29 years old, married to a man worth $40 million. Working a job that pays $38,000 a year. It's starting to look ... odd. Odd? My colleagues ask about you, what you do. I say you work in social services and they get this look. Like they're trying to figure out why my wife needs to work at all, let alone in a job that's essentially entry level. It's not entry level. I'm a program director at a tiny nonprofit. He softened his tone. I'm proud of what you do. But we need to think about appearances. My career depends partly on perception. A wife who works a low-paying job in a rough neighborhood, it raises questions about my financial situation. My judgment, I stared at him. You want me to quit my job because it makes you look bad? I want you to consider roles that are more appropriate for someone in your position. My position is what? Your wife. Your accessory? Don't be dramatic. I'm talking about strategic positioning that benefits both of us. I didn't quit, but the seed was planted. And over the next months, Richard watered it with increasingly frequent comments. You're exhausted all the time from that job. You could do so much more good on the board of directors. My mother keeps asking when you're going to step into a more appropriate role. People are starting to wonder if we're having financial problems. I started to feel ashamed of my work, ashamed of caring about it, ashamed of choosing purpose over prestige. By year 3, I quit, not because I wanted to. Because the constant pressure, the subtle suggestions that my work was somehow embarrassing, that I was embarrassing, it wore me down. I convinced myself Richard was right. I could do more good in other ways. I joined the board of 3 charitable organizations. I planned fundraising galas. I attended luncheons and committee meetings with other wealthy wives who treated charity work like a hobby, something to do between yoga classes and spa appointments. I hated every minute of it, but Richard was pleased. See? This suits you much better. You're making real connections, real impact. He gave me credit cards, platinum, black, no limits. Buy whatever you want, he said. You've earned it. Except I hadn't earned it. That was the problem. The money was his. The connections were his. Even the charitable boards only wanted me because of his name, his family's wealth. I tried to talk to him about it once, 6 months after I'd quit my job. I feel useless, I told him. Like I'm just ... decorative. Don't be ridiculous, Richard said, not looking up from his laptop. You're doing important work. Last month's gala raised $3 million. I didn't raise $3 million. Your name raised $3 million. I just arranged the seating charts. That's not fair to yourself. You're being too modest. But I wasn't being modest. I was being honest. And the more time passed, the clearer it became that Richard preferred modesty. Preferred me diminished. Preferred the version of me that organized his life and reflected well on his success without competing for attention or achievement. I started looking for something to do. Something that was mine. I'd always been interested in investing. When I was in college working those 3 jobs, I'd read everything I could about building wealth. I opened a Roth IRA with my first tax refund check and invested $1,000 in index funds. It was nothing compared to what Richard's family had, but it was mine. I'd built it myself. After I quit my job with endless empty hours to fill, I started studying markets seriously. Technical analysis, chart patterns, options strategies, momentum trading. I used some of my own money, the small savings I'd had before marriage, and opened a separate trading account. I didn't tell Richard. It wasn't a secret, exactly. He just never asked what I did with my days beyond the charity work he knew about. I started with $5,000. My strategy was simple. Identify momentum stocks with strong technical patterns, hold for short-term gains, cut losses quickly, let winners run. I paper traded for 2 months first, testing my approach, refining my rules. When I went live, I was methodical. Position sizing, stop losses, risk management protocols. I treated it like a business, not gambling. After 3 months, my 5,000 was up to 8,000. After 6 months, 14,000. After a year, 31,000. I was good at this. Really good. And for the first time since quitting my nonprofit job, I felt like myself again. Capable, intelligent, building something. Richard had no idea. By year 4 of our marriage, my trading account had grown to $97,000. Richard's income had grown to over $2 million annually. The gap between us widened daily, not just in wealth, but in power, respect, autonomy. Richard started making comments about my spending. The Amex bill was $15,000 this month. What did you buy? Furniture for the guest room. The chairs you said we needed. $15,000 for guest room furniture? You told me to furnish it properly. That's what proper costs. He sighed. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying you need to be mindful. Money doesn't grow on trees. I bit back the response that his money essentially did grow on trees, specifically the family tree. Instead, I said, I can be more careful. I think we should put you on a monthly allowance. A set amount for personal expenses. It'll help with budgeting. An allowance? It's just good financial planning. $10,000 per month for your personal use. Household expenses come from the joint account, but your personal shopping, charity contributions, that sort of thing, keep it to $10,000 monthly. I felt like I was 12 years old again, being told by a foster parent what I was allowed to have. But I agreed. Because by then, I'd learned that disagreeing with Richard led to long, circular conversations where he'd eventually logic me into feeling unreasonable for having feelings at all. The $10,000 allowance became another stream into my trading account. I took $5,000 per month, half his allowance, and invested it. The other $5,000 I used for actual expenses, though I spent as little as possible. Designer clothes held no appeal. Spa treatments felt wasteful. I wanted financial independence more than luxury. My trading account grew. $150,000, $220,000, $318,000. I was outperforming the S&P 500 by significant margins. My strategies were working. I documented everything, refined my approaches, developed a systematic method that generated consistent returns. Richard never noticed. He was too busy with Ashford Capital, with client meetings and board obligations, and cultivating the relationships that would eventually make him CEO after his father retired. The country club became our social hub. Ashford family membership going back 4 generations. Richard's parents were there every Saturday. His business partners were members. Important clients were entertained there. I hated it. The forced conversations with women who'd never worked a day in their lives, who treated me with barely concealed condescension because I'd come from nothing. The men who looked through me like I was furniture. The suffocating sense that everyone was performing their assigned roles in a play I'd never auditioned for. But Richard insisted it mattered. Networking happens at the club, he explained. These relationships are worth millions in business. We need to be visible, engaged, active members. So every Saturday, we had lunch at the country club. Richard talked business with the men. I made small talk with the wives. Everyone performed their roles. Until the Saturday that everything broke. We were at our usual table with 3 other couples, all Ashford Capital connections, all old money, all people Richard needed to impress. The conversation had turned to money management, portfolio diversification, the challenges of wealth preservation across generations. The key is finding advisors who understand complex family situations, Richard was saying. Most retail investors don't have the assets to require sophisticated strategies. Claire used to work in social services, Victoria Ashford said, her tone making it sound like I'd been employed in waste management. I'm sure she saw plenty of examples of poor financial decisions. Everyone laughed politely. Actually, I said, I've been learning about investing myself. It's fascinating how technical analysis can identify momentum. Opportunities before they're obvious to fundamental investors. Richard's hand tightened on his water glass. Warning. That's sweet, one of the wives said. I keep meaning to learn about our portfolio. My husband handles all that. Claire plays with stocks sometimes, Richard said, his tone affectionate and dismissive in equal measure. She has one of those trading apps. It keeps her entertained. How much have you made? One of the men asked, humoring me. About $340,000 over 3 years, I said. My returns are up 287%. The table went silent. Then Richard laughed. Claire, don't exaggerate. Those apps show fake numbers to keep you engaged. They're basically video games. I'm using E-Trade and Interactive Brokers, I said calmly. Real money, real trades, real returns. Where did you get $340,000 to invest? Victoria asked, her eyes sharp. Richard's face had gone pale. Claire, we can discuss this later. Discuss what? I've been using money from my personal allowance. $5,000 per month for the past 3 years. I've been day trading and swing trading with documented strategies and consistent returns. Your allowance is for personal expenses, Richard said tightly. Not gambling in the stock market. It's not gambling. It's strategic investing with clearly defined risk parameters. This is embarrassing, Victoria murmured. Embarrassing? I looked at her. Why? Because I've successfully invested money and generated returns that outperform most professional fund managers? Because you're making things up for attention, Richard said, his voice low and hard. This is neither the time nor the place for these fantasies. I stared at my husband. At the man I'd married. At the person who was calling me a liar in front of his parents, his colleagues, his entire social circle. I'm not making anything up, I said quietly. Claire, enough. Richard's voice had taken on the tone he used with subordinates. We'll discuss your little hobby at home. Stop embarrassing yourself. The other wives exchanged glances. Pity, judgment, second-hand embarrassment. Without my money, you'd be nobody again, Richard said, loud enough for the entire table to hear. Let's not pretend you've built anything meaningful with the allowance I give you. You want to play investor? Fine, but don't confuse a hobby with actual wealth creation. We both know where the real money comes from. The table nodded. Agreement. Validation of the natural order. Richard took a sip of his scotch, satisfied that he'd put me back in my place. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who'd once called me remarkable. Who'd said I made him better? Who'd promised partnership but delivered patronization. I picked up my Platinum American Express card. The one with his name as the primary account holder, my name as the authorized user, and placed it carefully on the white tablecloth. Then I stood up, picked up my purse, and walked out. Behind me, I heard Victoria say, well, that was dramatic. I heard Richard say, she be back. Where else is she going to go? I walked through the country club lobby, past the pictures of founding members and championship golf trophies, and evidence of generations of wealth and privilege that had nothing to do with merit or intelligence or worth. I walked to my car. The Mercedes Richard had bought me for my last birthday. Registered in his name because it's better for insurance purposes. I drove home to our penthouse, the one Richard had purchased before we married. The one where my name was on the deed because we didn't need the legal complications. I walked into the apartment and straight to my laptop. I logged into my E-Trade account. Balance, $187,492. I logged into my Interactive Brokers account. Balance, $168,337. Combined total, $355,829. I'd said $340,000 at lunch. I'd been conservative. I took screenshots of everything. Every account statement, every transaction history. 3 years of trades, all documented, all real. Then I opened a new document and began making lists. First list, every joint account we held. Every credit card in my name. Every point of financial connection. Second list, divorce attorneys. I started with internet searches, then moved to specific recommendations from a legal forum I'd been reading. Patricia Williams, Martha Chen, Rebecca Goldstein, all highly recommended for high net worth divorces. Third list, what I needed to do Monday morning. My phone started ringing at 4 p.m. Richard. I didn't answer. It rang again at 4:15, and 4:30, and 4:45. By 5 p.m., I'd received 11 calls from Richard, 3 from his mother, 2 from his father. I answered none of them. At 6 p.m., Richard came home. I heard the front door, his footsteps, his voice calling my name. I stayed in our bedroom, door locked. Claire, we need to talk. He knocked. Open the door. All communication through attorneys, I said. I'll be filing for divorce Monday morning. Silence. Then, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Over a stupid argument at lunch? Claire, I was just trying to save you from embarrassing yourself further. You were making claims that sounded delusional. I was protecting you. You called me a liar. You dismissed my accomplishments as fantasies. You told everyone at that table that without your money, I'm nobody. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. That's exactly what you meant. And you were wrong. Claire, please open the door. Let's talk about this like adults. We're done talking, Richard. I've been trying to talk to you for 3 years. You don't listen. You lecture. You dismiss. You condescend. I'm done. You're being irrational. I laughed. Actually laughed. I'm being perfectly rational. I've been rational for 3 years while you systematically made me smaller so you could feel bigger. I'm done shrinking. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? You have no job, no income. I have $355,000 in investment accounts that I built myself. I'm a successful trader with documented returns. I'll be fine. More silence. Then, quietly, show me. What? Show me the accounts. Prove you're not lying. I unlocked my phone and texted him the screenshots. Every statement, every return. 3 years of proof. I heard his phone chime. Heard the silence as he reviewed the images. This is real? His voice had changed. Uncertain now. Yes. You made this from your allowance? Yes. $355,000? Yes. Long silence. Then, why didn't you tell me? You never asked. You never once asked what I was doing with my days beyond the charity work. You assumed I was shopping, getting my nails done, lunching with the other wives. You didn't care what I actually did. I would have. If I'd known you were this good at trading, I would have. What? Been proud. Been interested. Or would you have told me to stop because it made you look bad that your wife was outperforming professional fund managers while you were struggling to beat the S&P? He didn't answer. Monday morning, Richard. My attorney will contact yours. I want a clean divorce. Equitable distribution of marital assets. No drama, no litigation. Just done. Claire, please. I love you. No, you don't. You love the version of me that makes you look good and doesn't challenge your ego. You don't even know the real me. You've never been interested in knowing her. I heard him leave. The front door closing. Silence. I sat in that locked bedroom for the rest of the evening, making plans. Monday morning, I had a 9 a.m. consultation with Patricia Williams. Her office was in a sleek midtown tower, all glass and steel, and the kind of restrained luxury that screamed competence. Patricia herself was 56, impeccably dressed, with shrewd eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Ashford, she said, shaking my hand. Tell me about your situation. I told her everything. The foster care background, meeting Richard, the gradual erosion of my autonomy, the job I'd quit, the allowance, the country club humiliation, my trading success. Patricia took notes, her expression neutral. Your trading accounts, she said when I finished. Are they solely in your name? Yes, separate from all joint accounts. Funded with money your husband gave you as a personal allowance? Yes, and he had no knowledge of these accounts until Saturday? Correct. He thought I was spending the allowance on personal expenses. He never asked for accounting or receipts. Patricia smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just been dealt a winning hand. Here's the situation, Mrs. Ashford. In New York, we have equitable distribution law. That means marital property is divided fairly based on various factors including length of marriage, income disparity, and contributions, both financial and non-financial. Okay, your trading accounts present an interesting question. They were funded with marital money, your allowance came from his income. However, the growth from $180,000 to $355,000 is arguably separate property, the result of your skill and effort. So I might not get to keep it. On the contrary, you'll almost certainly keep it all. But more importantly, you're entitled to a substantial share of his assets as well. He makes over $2 million annually. You've been married 6 years. You quit your career at his request. You've performed the role of corporate wife supporting his advancement. That has value. How much value? Conservatively. 1.5 to 2 million in settlement, possibly more depending on his full asset disclosure. Plus spousal maintenance for a period of time, given the income disparity and your career sacrifice. The number stunned me. That much? Mrs. Ashford, you gave up a career you loved to serve his ambitions. You played the role he needed you to play. That's worth compensation. Not because you need him to survive, you've proven you don't, but because the law recognizes that marriage is an economic partnership. When one spouse sacrifices career advancement for the other's benefit, they're entitled to share in the resulting success. I don't want to drag this out. Then we'll need leverage. I'll need access to all joint financial records, credit card statements, tax returns. And I'll want a forensic accountant to review everything. High net worth divorces often reveal hidden assets, questionable tax strategies, or other irregularities. You think Richard is hiding money? I think most wealthy people have complicated financial structures. Whether those structures are entirely legal and properly disclosed is always worth investigating. It's due diligence. I authorized her to proceed. She recommended a forensic accountant named David Chen, formerly with the IRS, now in private practice specializing in high net worth divorces. I met with David that afternoon. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with the slightly rumpled appearance of someone who spent more time with spreadsheets than people. Mrs. Ashford, he said, Patricia explained your situation. You want me to review your husband's financial records? Yes, I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. I'll need access to everything. Bank statements, brokerage accounts, tax returns, partnership documents from his firm, credit card statements, loan documents, everything. I'd been married to Richard for 6 years. I had access to all of our joint accounts, our home office files, our tax returns. I provided David with everything. Give me a week, he said. That week was strange. Richard called constantly 17 times the first day alone. I answered none of them. His father called. I didn't answer. His mother showed up at the apartment Tuesday evening. I didn't open the door. By Wednesday, Richard's attorney had contacted Patricia. They wanted to negotiate. They re-offering you $500,000 and spousal maintenance of $5,000 monthly for 2 years. Patricia told me over the phone, it's an insult. We're rejecting it. What should I counter with? Let's wait for David's report. I have a feeling we'll have more leverage than they expect. David called Friday afternoon. I found irregularities, he said. Significant irregularities. We met at Patricia's office within the hour. David spread documents across the conference table. Your husband has been extremely creative with his finances. Some of it is aggressive tax planning, legal, but questionable. But some of it crosses lines. What kind of lines? Patricia asked. He's been using personal credit cards for business expenses, then claiming the reimbursements as personal income that's not taxed. That's tax fraud. He's also been backdating stock option exercises to minimize tax liability. That's securities fraud. And he's been parking assets in his parents' names to keep them off his balance sheet. That's concealment. How much are we talking about? I asked. The concealed assets? Approximately $4.3 million. Investment properties, offshore accounts, partnership interests in private deals. All legally his, all acquired during your marriage. None disclosed in the initial asset list his attorney provided. Patricia's smile was fierce. This changes everything. There's more, David said quietly. Some of the offshore accounts are in the Cayman Islands. They restructured in ways that suggest possible money laundering, moving client funds through personal accounts temporarily to obscure transaction trails. I can't prove it definitively without more investigation. But the patterns are suspicious enough to warrant SEC attention. Are you saying my husband is committing crimes? I asked. I'm saying the patterns are consistent with financial crimes. Whether he's actually committed them would require federal investigation to determine. But the evidence is sufficient to open that investigation if we choose to report it. Patricia looked at me. This is your decision, Mrs. Ashford. We can use this as leverage to secure an excellent settlement and keep it quiet. Or we can report it and let the chips fall where they may. I thought about Richard at that country club table. Without my money, you'd be nobody again. I thought about 6 years of being systematically diminished, dismissed, made small. Report it, I said. All of it, even if it means criminal charges against your husband, especially if it means that. He called me nobody. He claimed I was lying about my accomplishments. He built his success partly on fraud and deception while calling my legitimate work a fantasy. He deserves consequences. David filed his report with the SAIC that afternoon. Patricia filed an amended divorce petition Monday morning, disclosing the forensic findings and demanding full discovery of all Richard's assets, including concealed holdings. The response was immediate. Richard's attorney called Patricia by noon. They wanted to negotiate immediately. They're panicking, Patricia told me. The SEC report has them terrified. They know if this goes to investigation, Richard could face federal charges. They want to settle fast and quiet. What are they offering? $2.5 million, full disclosure of all assets. No spousal maintenance because of your demonstrated earning capacity. Mutual non-disclosure agreement. Counter with $3.2 million. Complete asset disclosure including all offshore accounts. Written admission that the concealed assets existed and should have been disclosed initially, and no non-disclosure agreement. I want the right to discuss this publicly if I choose. Patricia raised her eyebrows. They'll never agree to no NDA. Then they can face the SEC investigation and the publicity that comes with federal securities fraud charges. Their choice. They agreed within 48 hours. $3.2 million. Complete asset disclosure. Written admission of concealment. No NDA. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Fastest high net worth divorce Patricia had ever handled. They wanted you gone before the SAIC investigation really got started, she explained. They're hoping that if you're no longer married, you'll be less motivated to cooperate with federal investigators. Will I be? That's up to you. The SEC will contact you. They'll want you to testify about the accounts, the concealment, the patterns David found. You're under no legal obligation unless they subpoena you. I'll cooperate, I said. Voluntarily. The settlement money hit my account on a Thursday morning. $3.2 million. Combined with my trading accounts, I had $3.6 million in liquid assets. I was 32 years old, divorced, and financially independent for the first time in my life. I celebrated by doing absolutely nothing. I sat in my new apartment, a bright, modern space in Chelsea with huge windows and my name on the lease, and just existed. No obligations, no expectations. No role to perform. It felt extraordinary. The SEC investigation moved forward. Richard's attorneys fought it, naturally, but David's documentation was thorough. The investigation expanded to include Ashford Capital's practices more broadly. I was interviewed 3 times by federal investigators. I told them everything I knew, provided every document I had, answered every question. Your cooperation has been invaluable, the lead investigator told me after the 3rd interview. Most spouses in your position would stonewall us. Most spouses weren't told they were nobody, I replied. 6 weeks after my divorce finalized, the SAIC filed formal charges against Richard Ashford for securities fraud, tax evasion, and concealment of assets. The charges also named Ashford Capital Management, triggering a full audit of the firm's practices. The story hit the financial press immediately. Ashford heir charged with securities fraud. Prominent wealth manager faces federal charges. The coverage was extensive and damaging. Richard's clients fled. His father forced him to resign from the firm. His position as heir apparent evaporated. I felt no satisfaction in his suffering. Just a cool sense of justice. While Richard's life imploded, I started building something new. I'd spent 6 weeks thinking about what I wanted to do. I had money now. I had freedom. I had demonstrated skill in trading and investment strategy. I wanted to help people like me. People from nothing who'd been told they couldn't understand finance, who'd been systematically excluded from wealth creation. I created Chase Capital Advisors. Not a hedge fund for the wealthy. An investment education platform for regular people who wanted to learn real strategies, not simplified advice that assumed they were too stupid to understand complexity. The platform offered 3 tiers: basics of investing, intermediate technical analysis, and advanced trading strategies. Each tier included video lessons I recorded myself, interactive exercises, real market simulations, and community forums. But the real innovation was the mentorship program. Anyone who completed the advanced tier could apply for 3 months of one-on-one mentorship with me personally, where I'd review their trades, teach them my strategies, and help them develop their own systematic approaches. I charged for the platform, not because I needed the money, but because free things aren't valued. The pricing was reasonable, $50 monthly for basic access, $150 for intermediate, $500 for advanced with mentorship application. I launched with no marketing, no press, just a simple website and a blog where I posted about my trading strategies and philosophy. The first week, I had 12 users. The second week, 37. Then someone shared my story on a financial forum. This is the woman whose wealthy husband called her investment success a fantasy. She's teaching real strategies, not dumbed-down advice. The third week, I had 400 users. Within 3 months, I had 18,000 users paying monthly subscriptions. The press noticed. Foster kid turned trader creates investment education empire. Woman told she was nobody, now worth millions. Teaching others. I gave interviews to Bloomberg, CNBC, Wall Street Journal. I talked about being dismissed, about systematic exclusion from financial education, about the assumption that regular people can't understand sophisticated strategies. We're taught that investing is complicated, that we need experts, that we should just hand our money over to professionals and hope for the best. I told Bloomberg. But with proper education and discipline, anyone can learn to invest successfully. The gatekeeping is artificial. The complexity is often manufactured to justify fees. Real investing is learnable. The interviews drove more users. 25,000, 38,000, 52,000. I hired a small team: customer service, technical support, content creators. I brought on 3 other successful traders to help with mentorship as the applications overwhelmed my capacity. 6 months after launch, Chase Capital Advisors was generating $2.1 million in annual revenue. After expenses, I was profiting about $1.4 million yearly, which I reinvested into platform improvements and content creation. More importantly, I was helping real people. The testimonials were extraordinary. I paid off my student loans by following your strategies. I learned more in 3 months with Chase Capital than in 10 years of reading investing books. You didn't talk down to me. You treated me like I was smart enough to understand. Thank you. That last one almost made me cry. Because I remembered being that person, the one desperate to be seen as capable, to be taken seriously. To be treated like intelligence wasn't a luxury reserved for the already wealthy. 8 months after my divorce, I received a call from Catherine Walsh at Phoenix Ventures, a venture capital firm specializing in financial technology. Ms. Hayes, she said, I've been following your company's growth. It's impressive. I'd like to discuss potential investment. I don't need investment, I said. The company is profitable and growing organically. I'm aware. But with proper capitalization, you could scale much faster. International markets, institutional partnerships, perhaps eventually an acquisition target. You're sitting on something valuable. Let's talk about maximizing that value. We met the following week. Catherine was sharp, direct, and refreshingly honest about what she saw in my company. You've built something that solves a real problem, she said. Financial education that respects its audience's intelligence. That's rare. Most platforms either oversimplify to the point of uselessness or gatekeep with artificial complexity. You found the middle ground. Rigorous education presented accessibly. Thank you. Phoenix Ventures invests in female founders building financial technology. We're particularly interested in platforms that democratize access to sophisticated strategies. Your company fits our thesis perfectly. What kind of investment? $5 million at a $25 million pre-money valuation. That gives us 20% equity. You retain control. You retain majority ownership. But you get capital to accelerate growth and expertise to navigate scaling challenges. I considered it carefully. I didn't need the money. I had over $5 million in personal assets, and the company was generating healthy profits. But capital would allow faster expansion, better technology, more mentors, international growth. What's your expectation for return? Ideally, exit within 5 years. Either acquisition by a major financial institution or possibly IPO if growth continues at this rate. We're targeting a minimum 10x return, which means getting the company to $250 million valuation within 5 years. That's ambitious. Your current trajectory suggests it's achievable. You have product market fit, strong retention, growing revenue, and a compelling founder story. The market is massive. Millions of people want real financial education. You're positioned to capture a significant share. I negotiated terms for a week, but ultimately agreed. $5 million in funding, 20% equity to Phoenix Ventures. Board seat for Catherine, but I retained majority control and operational authority. The investment closed 2 weeks later. With proper capital, Chase Capital Advisors expanded rapidly. I hired 15 more people. I rebuilt the platform with professional developers. I launched a mobile app. I expanded internationally into English-speaking markets, UK, Australia, Canada, Singapore. I started a podcast where I interviewed successful traders about their strategies, their mistakes, their lessons learned. It became one of the top finance podcasts within 4 months. I wrote a book, From Nothing to Something, Real Investment Strategies for Regular People. It became a Wall Street Journal bestseller, which led to more press, more users, more credibility. 1 year after my divorce, Chase Capital Advisors had 138,000 paying users across 12 countries. Annual revenue had grown to $15 million. The company was valued at $80 million in its Series A round. I'd personally grown my net worth to $8.3 million through a combination of company equity appreciation and continued successful trading. I was 33 years old. I'd gone from foster kid to nonprofit worker to trophy wife to multi-millionaire entrepreneur in just over a decade. But more importantly, I'd gone from nobody to somebody, not because of who I married or what he gave me, but because of what I built myself. Richard's story went differently. The SEC investigation concluded with criminal charges. He pled guilty to securities fraud and tax evasion in exchange for a reduced sentence. 3 years in federal prison, 5 years supervised release, permanent bar from securities industry. Ashford Capital Management survived but was severely damaged. His father had to step back in as CEO. The firm lost 40% of its assets under management. The Ashford family name was permanently tarnished in financial circles. Richard's parents blamed me for cooperating with investigators. "You destroyed our family," Victoria Ashford told me when I ran into her at a charity event. "You vindictive, ungrateful." "I told the truth," I said calmly. "Richard committed crimes. I didn't make him do that. I just declined to help him hide it. He gave you everything." "No, he gave me an allowance and a role to play." I gave him 6 years of supporting his career and diminishing myself. Actually, considering he's a convicted felon and I'm a successful entrepreneur, I think I came out ahead. She walked away. I didn't feel bad. 18 months after my divorce, I was invited to speak at a women's entrepreneurship conference. 5,000 attendees, mostly women building businesses, seeking funding, navigating male-dominated industries. I told my story: foster care, nonprofit work, meeting Richard, the gradual erosion, the country club humiliation, the divorce, the company I'd built. "He called me nobody," I said to that crowd of 5,000 women. He meant it as an insult, a reminder of my place. But being nobody, coming from nothing, turned out to be my greatest advantage, because I never forgot what it felt like to have nothing. And I never, ever took for granted what I built myself. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. After the speech, women lined up to talk to me. Their stories were variations on the same theme: dismissal, condescension, systematic undermining by partners or colleagues or industries that couldn't imagine them as equals. "How did you find the courage to leave?" one woman asked. "It wasn't courage," I told her honestly. "It was clarity. The moment Richard called me nobody in front of all those people, I saw our entire marriage clearly. I saw that he needed me to be nobody so he could be somebody. And I realized I'd rather be somebody alone than nobody with him." That answer resonated. It became the title of a Harvard Business Review article about my company. "I'd rather be somebody alone. How financial dismissal drives women's entrepreneurship." The publicity drove more growth. Chase Capital Advisors crossed 200,000 users. Revenue hit $25 million annually. Series B funding came in at $150 million valuation. I was 34 years old and worth over $20 million personally. I bought a townhouse in the West Village. Not a penthouse in someone else's building, but an entire house that was mine. I furnished it with pieces I chose, colors I loved, art that spoke to me. Every inch of it reflected who I actually was, not who I was supposed to be. I started a foundation, the From Nothing Fund, that provided financial education and microgrants to foster youth aging out of the system. Kids like I'd been facing adulthood with no resources, no safety net, no financial literacy. We're teaching them what nobody taught us. I told the board at our first meeting. Not just how to budget or save, but how to invest, how to build wealth, how to see themselves as capable of financial success. We're teaching them they're not nobody. They're somebody building something. The foundation partnered with social services agencies, foster care systems, youth organizations. Within the first year, we'd reached 3,000 kids in 15 states. The testimonials were incredible. Nobody ever taught me I could invest. I thought that was for rich people. I learned more about money in 3 months from nothing than in 18 years of foster care. You made me believe I could build something from nothing. And I did. That last one came from a 19-year-old in Chicago who'd used our curriculum to start day trading, turned her first minimum wage paycheck into $5,000 over 8 months, and was now putting herself through community college without loans. She sent me that message 2 years after my divorce. I read it in my office, my actual office, in my company's actual headquarters with my name on the door as founder and CEO, and cried for 10 minutes, not sad tears, grateful tears. Because I'd been that girl once. And now I was helping thousands more like her. Richard was released from federal prison after serving 18 months of his 3-year sentence. Good behavior, apparently. I heard about his release through mutual acquaintances. He was working as a financial analyst at a small firm, making a fraction of his former salary. He'd moved to a modest apartment in Queens. His parents had largely cut him off. His social circle had evaporated. He tried to contact me once, 6 months after his release. An email, subject line, "I'm sorry." I didn't open it immediately. I sat looking at it in my inbox for a full day, debating whether to read it or just delete it. Eventually, curiosity won. "Claire, I know I have no right to contact you. I know you've moved on and built something extraordinary without me. I've been following your company's success from a distance. It's remarkable. You're remarkable. I was wrong about everything. You were never nobody. You were always brilliant, capable, worthy, all the things I was too arrogant and insecure to see. I made you small because I needed to feel big. That's unforgivable. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I lost. Not the marriage, though I lost that too. But the person you are. The partner you could have been if I'd ever actually seen you as an equal. I destroyed my life with my own choices. The fraud, the concealment, the crimes, those were mine. The consequences are mine, but the biggest loss was you. And that's mine too. I hope you're happy. I hope your life is everything you deserve, and I hope you never, ever doubt your worth again. Richard, I read it twice, then I closed the email and deleted it. Not out of anger, just out of completeness. That chapter was finished. Richard's regret, his understanding, his belated recognition of my worth, none of it mattered anymore. I didn't need his validation. I'd built my own. I never responded. 3 years after my divorce, Chase Capital Advisors was acquired by a major financial institution for $420 million. My share, after Phoenix Ventures and other investors, $200 million. Combined with my personal trading success and other investments, my net worth crossed $250 million. I was 36 years old and independently wealthy beyond anything I'd imagined possible. But the number didn't mean as much as I'd thought it would. Don't get me wrong, financial security was profound, especially for someone who'd started with nothing. But the real satisfaction came from what I'd built, not what I'd earned. 300,000 people had used Chase Capital Advisors to learn real investment strategies. Thousands had built legitimate wealth. Hundreds had left bad situations because they'd gained financial independence. The From Nothing Fund had reached over 15,000 foster youth with financial education and microgrants. We had documented success stories. Kids putting themselves through college, starting businesses, buying first homes, breaking cycles of poverty. That mattered. That was worth more than any number in my bank account. At the acquisition celebration dinner, Catherine Walsh raised a glass to toast me. To Claire Hayes, who proved that the best response to being called nobody is building something that changes thousands of lives. To success that speaks louder than any insult. I raised my glass and looked around the table at my team, my mentors, my partners, people who'd helped me build this. People who'd believed in the mission. To building something real, I said. To helping others build something too. To proving that coming from nothing is not a disadvantage, it's clarity about what actually matters. We drank to that. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Miss Hayes? A young woman's voice. Nervous. I'm sorry to call so late. I got your number from the From Nothing Fund. I'm a former foster kid and I just ... I wanted to thank you. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. I learned about investing through your platform. I started with $300 from my first real job. I've been following your strategies for 2 years. I just crossed $50,000 in my portfolio. I'm putting myself through college debt-free. And I'm teaching my little sister. She's still in foster care, so she will know she can do this too. My throat tightened. That's extraordinary. You did that yourself. You showed me it was possible. You showed me that coming from nothing doesn't mean staying nothing. That matters. That changes everything. We talked for 20 minutes. I gave her some additional resources, encouraged her to apply for one of our mentorship programs, told her about scholarship opportunities for former foster youth interested in finance. When I hung up, I sat in the quiet of my townhouse, my home, my space, my sanctuary that no one could take away, and thought about Richard at that country club table. Without my money, you'd be nobody again. He'd been wrong about so many things, but especially that. I was never nobody. I'd always been somebody building something from nothing. The only difference was that now I knew it. And I was helping thousands of others know it too. And that was worth everything.